I think that Charlie Adelson is the family fixer. He made more money than his father. His mother came to him with problems versus going to Harvey, her husband. Even when she had problems with her daughter, Donna, went to Charlie. So I think that Charlie looked at himself as the head of the Adelson family. And I think that it's very possible that Charlie Adelson decided to fix the problem of Dan Markle. We'll have to wait to see if the jury thinks that the state proved this case. I want you all to ask yourself a few questions before you listen to my opinion about the Charlie Adelson Hitman for Hire trial. Ask yourself if what the jury heard is enough to convict Charlie Adelson. His extortion excuse is convoluted, but there's no smoking gun. Did the state really do a good enough job as painting Donna Adelson as more than a meddlesome mother, but one who is controlling, one who would do anything, including orchestrate a murder with her son to be near her grandsons? Did Charlie Adelson's attorney, did he do enough to show that Charlie accumulated as much cash as he did that was in his safe in the way that Charlie explained that he did? Keep in mind, the defense does not have to prove anything. The burden is completely on the state. What do I think that Charlie has going in his favor, and what do I think that he does not? Well, Charlie chose, he didn't have to, but he chose to mount a defense. It is the burden of the state to prove that Charlie Adelson orchestrated the murder of his ex-brother-in-law beyond a reasonable doubt. Charlie really didn't have to say anything, but it is his right to take the stand, and Charlie chose to do so. I think that that his demeanor on the stand, that he did well. I think that he looked sincere at appropriate times. He didn't hesitate to say that Dan Markle was very involved with his boys and that this was a tragedy, Dan Markle's murder, for his nephews. I think that there's no murder weapon. Luis made a deal. He gets 19 years for this murder instead of a life sentence. Katie, who has flipped on Charlie, she's gotten a life sentence, and she would like some consideration from the state. So Katie and Luis do have a reason to lie, but will the jury believe that they're lying? That's Charlie's problem. The gifts that Charlie gave Katie, the gifts that he offered Katie. You can drive my Land Rover whenever you want. She has a Mercedes that was his father's. We all know that there's no money that can be found that was exchanged for that Mercedes. Katie McBonawa's gifts are over the top, excessive. Even with Charlie's explanation that he wanted to keep her happy because he thought that she was trying to help him, to protect him from an extortionist, that makes no sense. According to Charlie, Katie says, "My friend murdered Dan Markle." Charlie could have put an end to all of that by going to the police. And the state elicited from Charlie that he has gone to the police at other times for things uninvolved with this case. I think it's ridiculous to assume that a man like Charlie Adelson would agree to be extorted for life. So what else does Charlie have going for him? There's no murder weapon. Luis and Sigfredo are Latin King gang members. Sigfredo was very, very jealous over Charlie Adelson's relationship with Katie McBonawa, but could Charlie convince a jury that Sigfredo was so jealous and that he knew that Charlie had $1 million, or he thought that Charlie had $330,000, so he decided to murder Dan Markle and extort Charlie Adelson? Is having to jump over too many fences. And I don't know that Charlie can convince any juror that Sigfredo Garcia murdered his ex-brother-in-law without his knowledge, especially considering the money that Sigfredo and Katie were spending after this murder. That does not come off as extortion money. That comes off as payment for a murder. And that's also another explanation as to why Charlie wanted to keep Katie happy. He wanted to keep her close. He did not know who the undercover officer was. So the undercover officer, the bump, I think the jury may be back and forth on Charlie's reaction to who this guy was. But it comes back to this question: why didn't Charlie call the police? I think that there's no murder weapon, so Charlie has that going for him. He wasn't at the scene of the crime. He talks a lot, but there's nothing on that wiretap where he's saying, I paid for this, I'm involved in this. In fact, Charlie had a plausible explanation for a lot that was on the wiretap. It's what Charlie could not explain. He could not explain threatening Sigfredo Garcia. Instead of saying, I think this guy's after me and I'm going to use my First Amendment rights to protect myself, Charlie is saying, Sigfredo better take care of this problem. And if he doesn't, I can find somebody to do it. You know, he used the word kill. So Charlie's fear of Sigfredo is also in question. Charlie admitted to having a firearm. Charlie says that this all happened the same night that Dan Markell was killed. He didn't come forward after Sigfredo was arrested. He didn't come forward after Katie was arrested. Charlie said nobody asked him. Nobody asked him, even though he thought that he was being extorted and Katie was innocent, that nobody asked him and he hoped that the truth would come out. But then he says that he cared about Katie. Charlie says over and over, Katie was broke, Katie was broke. But then he says that he offered to take Katie to look for a boat. I think when you weigh what Charlie has going in his favor and what he does not have going in his favor, which is his constant conversations with his mother about his sister's divorce and the convoluted defense that Charlie has offered to the jury, I think are Charlie's biggest negatives. I do see why the state waited to bring this case. There is no straight line to Dr. Charlie Adelson. The jury does have to put aside what could be plausible explanations for some things. And here Charlie Adelson is, as far as the jury knows, a law-abiding oral surgeon who propelled his family into wealth, who's a good son to his mother, who loves his sister and, offers her advice, was willing to pay $350,000 so that she could possibly relocate. I think that the state had all of that to deal with versus what people think about Latin King gang members and about, baby mamas. The mother of Charlie Adelson's child was called the mother of his child. Katie McBonawa, or the mother of Luis's child, was called his baby mama. So there is a huge difference. Luis Rivera says that he can't read, that he's not literate. And here Charlie is, a very brilliant man by his undergrad degree, by the career that he's chosen. So the jury's out. And even though I may feel, and you may feel, that Charlie Adelson orchestrated the murder of his ex-brother-in-law, it's possible that at least one jury member will feel the same way, but feel as though that the state did not prove it. I think this. What is the connection to Dan Markell, Luis Rivera, Sigfredo Garcia? Is Katie McBonawa. And how is Katie McBonawa connected to Dan Markell? Because she was dating Dan Markell's ex-brother-in-law, Dr. Charlie Adelson. That's my take.